Everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking to Eva Yazhari. Eva, it's great to connect with you. BeyondCapitalVentures.com. You're a diversified emerging markets venture capital firm. You invest in the future of global growth through need to have sectors all led by conscious leaders. I want to get to that. You're investing in early stage companies in India and East Africa. You've been doing it for over a decade. Let's talk about conscious leaders. Let's start there. So you're investing in people with conscious leaders. How would you define conscious?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here with you, John. How I define conscious is awareness of all stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what makes any leader a resilient leader in volatility and uncertainty, but in just day-to-day business, like things come along, right? And so the way we think about conscious leadership at Beyond Capital Ventures is a founder aware of more than just their shareholders and their customers? Are they thinking about their employees and supporting the health of their employees, or the wellness or the well-being of their employees, and the happiness and the purpose of their employees? Are they engaged with the government? Are they engaged with their community? Are they engaged with potentially even the climate as a stakeholder? And that helps our founders navigate what people perceive to be very high risk factors in emerging markets, which are simply just risks to know about and to manage to. And that's kind of one of the ways that we mitigate risk as an investment firm in our markets.
That's great. Let's keep on talking about this. So you have the conscious leader, and then you have the conscious capitalist, right? Yeah. So conscious on all of those fronts, but they still want to make money. And so sometimes the capitalist can start to kind of seep into the consciousness. How do you, when you invest in companies, how do you look for the balance of that to make sure that they stay in alignment?
I don't believe anywhere there has to be a trade-off between conscious investing or conscious capitalism and profit. I think it's a decision to have a trade-off, whether you're deciding to not have impact intentionally, or you are deciding to not have financial return. It is an investor's choice. So straight down the fairway, there are a lot of opportunities. And for us, how we kind of mix these two areas to create top quintile venture returns, top quintile private credit returns in our markets on a risk-adjusted basis, and a very strong impact in our firm is we add all of these elements as ingredients to our due diligence process.
Yeah.
And we ensure that not only is somebody a conscious leader, and we actually have a scoring system at various stages of our venture capital DD process, but we also ensure that the company has unit economic profitability in their projections. We ensure that they have sustainability and scalability. We actually have an extraordinary number of companies in our funds that are EBITDA positive for the stage of business, or even net profitable. And so we add in all of this almost like in the soup of a due diligence in order to produce the result of yes or no. Will we fund this company with the objective of having commercial return and what we call impact, but could also just be viewed as conscious capitalism, like an awareness of all stakeholders, so that nobody is necessarily, or nobody or no thing is not considered in the way that company operates. And we also understand that perfect is the enemy of good. And I say good in two ways in that sentence. It's perfect is the enemy of just like doing good, and doing, having impact in the world. But perfect is also the enemy of good. And as an investor for over 16 years, I can tell you there's a lot of gray in the investment world.
It's all gray. Everything's gray. Nothing is black and white. Yeah.
Exactly.
So wait, let's talk for a minute about, what you just shared could be a venture capital company of any business anywhere in the world. You have chosen companies in India and East Africa for the past decade. Why those markets?
Yeah. Well, I have a personal connection to the African continent. My father grew up in Tanzania. When I worked on Wall Street, I always had this like subconscious programming from the back of me, or like subconscious, about what the opportunity was in other markets. And like any good hedge fund investor, I took a contrarian bet, which is what hedge funds do. They typically are often seeing an opportunity that others are not. And when I saw the opportunity to invest in the next billion consumers, which is effectively between East Africa and India, kind of the number of the rising consumer class, where we specifically allocate to companies that are meeting that need, I jumped on it. And so for me, East Africa had the personal connection, but also we were looking for English, as a kind of business language, basis of the British legal system, other favorable dynamics around startup ecosystem and capital flowing into that ecosystem. Nairobi is actually called the Silicon Savannah, and that's where our office sits. We're kind of on the Sand Hill Road of Nairobi and sit with all the other investors and have a really incredible deal flow. India was a very important diversifier. As a classical portfolio allocator, I understand what investors want and need. Investors may be intrigued by Africa. What they really are looking for is emerging markets and access to the future of global growth. And that is what we provide by blending two of the largest emerging markets into one portfolio.
That's great. So you're talking about, conscious investing. You've written a book about kind of conscious investing, the good your money can do.
Yeah.
And so we got conscious leadership. We have conscious investing. Tell me a little bit about your book.
Yeah, I wrote my book and published it in 2021 because I was sitting at dinner tables with people of extreme wealth, at least on the global scale, and they seemed very either confused or unaware of the impact that their money could have. And I had been working in a space of blending commercial returns and impact for over a decade at that point, and really just, had a call to action to provide a playbook, people to think about their money in a different way. I think what purpose is an ingredient for everybody when it comes to longevity, when it comes to, feeling good every day. And one of the arguments I make in the book is that if you can have an impact with your money, your consumer choices, with your bank account, where your money sleeps at night, why not? Because you wake up every single day feeling much more connected to something bigger than yourself. And we know from studying blue zones, we know from Harvard researchers like Dr. Sinclair, that purpose is as important as taking the longevity supplement.
How do people, it seems to me, I'm a business coach, and it seems to me, I'm talking to a lot of people. I have my podcast. I'm talking to clients. I'm not saying this to sound like it sounds, but I'm talking to clients globally. Yeah. And it seems to me, and I'm talking to a lot of different levels of people within a company. It seems to me that people feel more disconnected than ever and trying to find their purpose. Yeah. And so just, what would you kind of being in this space and really on a big global level, but if we just kind of water that down, so law of proximity, people can kind of like, see what that, mirror right in front of them is showing. How would you guide people who maybe don't have the money to invest, to be a conscious investor, but to be just more conscious, to get reconnected to their own purpose and just reconnect with themselves and reconnect with their community?
Yeah. Well, step one is more of a mindset, and it's that no investment is neutral. And when I say investment, think about this broadly for the audience that maybe doesn't have an investment portfolio or a big investment portfolio. It's really like investment of your time, investment of your consumer choices, or just $50 in a mutual fund that meets your values, that potentially screens out companies that you are not aligned with. Yeah. So that is step one, is having an awareness that everything you put your energy to has an impact, whether positive or negative. There's no way to absolve yourself from the fact that everything you do has an impact.
Yeah.
The second step, yeah, thank you. And the second step is really examining what you own. So, the protein powder that I drink as a female founder, that's something that's important to me in today's world.
Yeah.
There are other examples where does my money sleep at night? I want to find a way for my money to be in a community bank. And I would say the kind of quick answer to what you're saying, which is like, how can somebody just click in fast in a world where you don't have purpose, is think local.
Yeah.
I think that right now, it's very easy people need to disengage.
Yeah.
Psychologically. They're doing it because they can't handle it. And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm not a coach. I've been coached a lot, but so that's not coaching advice. That's just my personal observation.
Good advice. It's good advice.
Thinking local helps you connect with people, with community. And so what I do is in my school community, I'm like, who's hosting a charity event? How can I get involved? How can I help out with that? How can I bring a dish to the dinner? How can I be a part of community? How can I be with people that are aligned with my values? And community is actually a chapter in the book as well, because you cannot be a conscious investor without community. You will feel very lonely. And B, it will feel like a long journey. And then C, you'll be missing out on all the learning that everybody else can bring to the table. And your learning will be slower. And if you have a community, you'll actually be able to accelerate that.
Yeah, I love the way you articulated that. And it's really about what small thing can feed your soul. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to change the world. It just needs to, feed the soul. Let me ask you a question about your book. I wrote a book about 7 years ago. And it's a journey to write a book. And what I found was I kind of mapped out the outline. I kind of thought, and then once I started writing, the book started kind of writing itself. It was like part of it kind of wrote through me. And it was a very therapeutic process. There was it wasn't an easy process. And in some spaces, you got to get to like a weird place in your brain to kind of like write certain things. And so what did you learn about yourself writing your book?
Well, like you, John, this topic was in me. I had spent 10 years having these conversations on both sides, very deep impact conversations with people who had committed their entire portfolios to having impact and their whole lives, to the point where they were extremely wealthy and they always drove a hybrid car. They've been driving a hybrid car for 20 years. All the way through extreme wealth that seemed very confused about how to have impact and lacked tremendous amount of purpose.
Yeah.
And so what did I learn about myself was what we call in a framework that I know really well, which is the Hoffman process, when I be, do, have, that's when I attract. So my book is an entire expression of me, how I see the world, and my framework for thinking, and it is authentic, which is my be.
Yeah.
If I were to do, have, be, in other words, if I were to kind of write a book because I think everybody needs to read it and, have all the things that come from being an author and the recognition, et cetera, and then I get to be that author, that I think is where I personally would not have felt purpose. And I was looking for purpose in writing the book. The second thing about writing a book was I actually, at points in my life, have been very imperfect. One of them was my wedding almost 18 years ago. And the other one was writing this book. I let it flow to a level that when I edited the book was somewhat like, whoa, did I go there? And like, did I actually was I like not filtered enough to write that? And I let it be. When I kind of edited the book, of course, we made sure that there were grammatical corrections, but I really let it be who I really am, almost beyond the filtered version that everybody gets to see every day.
Yeah. When you mentioned Hoffman, that was great. Thank you. Are you talking about Hoffman Institute?
Yes, I've done the Hoffman process.
Yeah. So I've been hearing so much about Hoffman recently. And the call that I had right before, I was running like a minute or two late. The person was talking, they just got back from Hoffman. It's like, keep on hearing it over. It's supposed to be an amazing experience. I have a question about, some of the stories. Can you share? Because I think people connect best with story. If you go to your website, there's a lot of, again, beyondcapitalventures.com, and you can go to portfolio and you have a picture of, people and their stories behind it. What's one or two stories that people can connect with so they understand kind of, if they were a conscious investor that wanted to consciously invest with you, that would really articulate where that money goes, and it can infuse their level of purpose?
So one of the sectors we invest in is what we call mobility. Mobility is really just transportation, and we typically do that only in electric mobility. And because we see that where we invest at Beyond Capital Ventures, typically those economies are leapfrogging some of the legacy systems that we have had here in the West, and whether that's traditional banking or that's just internal combustible engine vehicles. And we are invested in a company which produces motorbikes. So everybody can just think two-wheeler, motorcycle or scooter in the US. And they're all electric vehicles. While somebody may think, okay, great, like climate impact, what's really cool about that company is the rider is not interested in the climate impact. The rider is typically a gig economy worker doing Uber Eats delivery or taking people from point A to point B. They're concerned about cost savings, and they'd have typically 50% more take-home pay. And so they are incentivized to buy this bike. They finance it, they own it, just like any kind of vehicle that we would, either lease or buy in the US. And they utilize it for their day-to-day. What else is really interesting to visualize is that bike represents so much more. I mentioned it represents income. It represents an urban economy getting from point A to point B. It also represents a new way of accessing energy. So the company has also become a battery swap company where the riders need access to batteries. Every single day they have to go and swap their batteries. And being a gig economy worker, they don't have the time to wait. There's no plug at home. They don't want to go to a Tesla supercharger where they have to sit there for 25 minutes. They want to ride up, have the battery swapped out, move on to the next delivery. And the company known as Ampersand has been able to create that. In fact, 75% of their revenue in the business comes from the battery swap network now, which we're very excited about. So the visualization of that bike as something that produces income, that moves goods around, and is supporting a clean economy, which is not just doing good. In fact, in Rwanda, ice bikes are outlawed, and they were taken off the road at the beginning of 2025. So over a year ago. So everybody needs to have an electric vehicle. Yeah. And as a result of that, this company is also kind of in line with regulatory tailwinds. And that's what we like to see in our companies. And I think that's a great story.
Great. It's great. So I want to ask you a question. So you talked about your dad. You made mention earlier about, you got a call to action. I want to talk about a little bit about your soul's purpose into moving here. I'm a big believer that, in many cases we teach our pain. I read a book 25, 30 years ago. As I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about it, by Gary Zukav, The Seed of the Soul. The book talks about how when the personality ends and the soul begins and nobody notices, that's the ideal human being. I may be getting some of that wrong, but that's kind of ish what it talks about. And so you've chosen a path from, Wall Street, hedge fund, what everybody in the world right now is graduating college of business schools and trying as hard as they possibly can, which is impossible, to get into that hedge fund, Wall Street, private equity, banking, finance world. And you kind of moved into a different direction. And so I would think that when you, quote unquote, from many people's perspective, had the ideal job, career, but it seems like your soul moves you in the same world, but in a little bit of a different direction, halfway around the world. What was that purpose and soulful mission for you?
Yeah, I do want to say working on Wall Street was an excellent training. I think it's very important to have. I worked for a genius entrepreneur who was kind of building a business within a business.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to run a fund business. And that is a skill that will live with me forever. It's in my like cells at this point.
Yeah.
And so I really valued the work that I did at Entrust Capital on the fund to fund side. I met incredible people and learned a lot about the markets. In fact, I've utilized those skills in the past couple of weeks with what's going on in volatility. However,
quick question before you just talk about the bridge of that, because I think having the right mentor who is selfless and will actually teach you is not as common as I think many people think. And I think finding a position, albeit maybe incredible, having the right mentor is really the magic of it. And so can you just talk a little bit about how that person mentored you and how you've taken that mentorship to mentor others?
Yeah. So, I mean, with a lot of love and respect, I don't think he was the great mentor, but he was a equal opportunity provider. And that's what really mattered. Like he could have chosen man or woman on Wall Street, he would hire the best person. And that I think was really, he may not even realize that that was a strength of his, to be honest.
Okay.
But you know, the ability to just, if you can do the job, I'll give you the work. And I think what really is important actually for the listener is not go find a right mentor. It's like, be willing to do the work, right? Be willing
absolutely today. Yeah.
Be willing to go beyond your comfort zone. Like I was 20 years old out of the Columbia Math program, building the models that the early models, the fund has, you know, hired computer scientists, et cetera, that coded all this stuff later on. But, you know, building the early computer models where we were kind of assessing our allocations and understanding what we were exposed to as a fund. That opportunity was given to me by somebody, right? I was not really taught how to do it. It was more like, dive in, I trust you. And that is what's really key, is the trust and the respect that I received. That I'll never forget, which is why I always, you know, value my background and my career and have confidence in running a venture fund. Which is important because part of running a venture fund is running a fund business. You're not just investing, you're not just raising money, you're running the fund business. And that can actually be the hardest part to do.
Yeah.
And so, John, going to your question around
I just want to say one thing real quickly, because I think it's really, really important today, specifically for the Gen Z generation. You have got to hustle and work hard. And there was a recent article like a week or two ago in Fortune magazine. Bosses are firing Gen Z grads just months after hiring them was the title, because they're not working hard. They're not seeing that this is, I don't want to broad stroke everything, but per this article, and I'm seeing it also, they're not working like you and I worked back in the day, or probably even now. And you got to work hard. No matter what, you got to work hard. So I just want to echo the importance of showing up early and being the first one there and being the last one to leave and asking a lot of questions and just hustle and grind. I think it's important. You're going to balance, but you still got to work hard and be seen as somebody who works hard.
And one perspective that's often not stated is you and I did that, John, and we're still alive.
Correct.
And like, we're still thriving, right? We did it, but we're still thriving. There was no negative impact on our future life of not having balance. If anything, you have more experience, more money in the bank, and that's like proverbial and real money in the bank to live a more balanced life later on.
Yeah.
When you have kids, and when you have a mortgage, and when you have kids in private school or whatever it may be.
Correct.
You want that balance. That's actually when you want it. That's my perspective. Yeah. I hope to teach my children the same.
My kids are 2023. My wife and I have been, I'll just share this one story. I remember, it doesn't even matter. I'll tell you once we're done. But yeah, so keep on going on your piece.
Sure. So when it came to soul, I think I'm an only child. I was relatively precocious. I'm pretty self-aware. Trying my best, right? I'm still a human. And what I reflected on is, who do I want to be when I'm older? And I knew the financial upside of working on Wall Street. I loved the job. Part of it for me was I wanted to leave New York City, which had nothing to do with the fund. I grew up there. It's a very tough environment. It's almost like an over hustle culture. And I needed a little bit of a break from New York. I always say New York will never go anywhere. It's always going to be there for me, and I'll always be a New Yorker. But I think I really just knew energetically where I wanted to be. And I just saw an opportunity. I read a book called The Life You Can Save by Peter Singer. He's a moral philosopher based out of Princeton. And to me, that book changed everything, because the real fundamental question was, everything we have and do here in the West is a material value for billions of people on this planet. You know, my sweater, my necklace, my earrings, my chair, my smoothie, right? Everything that we do in the West has a material impact. And I was really drawn to have a deeper impact, but to do it in a way where I got to use my finance skills, because that was really fun to me. And that to me was my soul, was that connection between impact and returns, and living that out as a human being.
Yeah. You've talked a lot about awareness, self-awareness, awareness of the direction, and kind of how you've moved through life, through business. What's one thing you would recommend to somebody who's listening right now and just kind of feeling like their own personal level of awareness, whether in life, business, their company, et cetera, isn't aware? What would you recommend that they start doing?
Yeah. Well,
to raise their awareness, own self-awareness?
Yeah, I think there are two things. One is more external, which is have an abundance mindset. That seems internal, right? But you're thinking about the world through that lens, right? Having an abundance mindset, I think, is an aware. It's a consciousness tool. Yeah. Am I thinking what we call at my firm above the line or below the line? Do I see possibility, or am I fear-based? Fear-based in every single decision is a killer. Yeah. Never works. Never works.
Yeah.
The colleague asked me this morning, hey, we have a speaking opportunity. Is that a risk? Do you think people might not like our pitch? And I had to really hold back, John. I had to really hold back and not say, that's fear-based. I had to say, let's just say yes to that. Let's see what's possible here, right? And so fear in every decision will kill you. The second thing is I traded Instagram for Zen meditation this year. I, in the past, have been a kind of more of a bhakti meditator, like through the yogic tradition. And I found this incredible app that Tim Ferriss pushed to me through his podcast, The Way, with Henry Schuckman.
Okay.
There, you get free sessions in the beginning and you can try it out. I love it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the pathways that it takes me on. And that is a serious awareness tool. If anything, I'm learning more about myself than I have from any kind of self-paced work over the past 5 years.
I love meditation. I've been meditating since my early 20s. Mm-hmm. And I Silva Mind Method. I've took a transcendental meditation. I really love Monroe Institute, some of theirs. And there's a great app called Brain.fm.
Oh yeah, I used to use that.
Yeah, it's great. And I'm going to check out The Way too, because sometimes I kind of go in phases. Like I can do TM and then I feel like, TM's not kind of like, I'm not vibing with it. So I'll, do Monroe for like a month, and it just kind of depends. But I think that silence is really, really important. It's maybe undervalued a little bit. It's hard. And I think a lot of people want to do what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, but there's a natural resistance because it's not very easy to sit for a minute. One of the things when I'm doing trainings or keynotes, I always incorporate, I may change the name to executive time, meditation, depending on the group. But I have everybody just do nothing for 1 minute, and I time it. And there's a very large majority of the people typically who have never taken a minute, and a large majority who found by show of hands that 1 minute felt like 10 minutes and was actually painful. Yeah. It's really, really hurtful. I'll just throw out a book too. You've mentioned a book that I want to read. I love Stephen Pressfield's work, which is the War of Art. And the book talks about resistance and why we as human beings resist what we need to do most. So think community. All right. So tell everybody a little bit about your business, who your ideal clients are, where they can connect with you, and, all that.
Yeah. Well, I can't say too much because of SEC regulation, but I manage people's money. I think it's a privilege of a lifetime. They have to be accredited investors or qualified purchasers. There is actually a public way to get involved with our work, which is through a donor advised fund platform called Catacap. And that's public, that's kind of publicly available if you search for me. But you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Eva Yazhari. And you can find us at beyondcapitalventures.com. I'm a little bit less active on social, meaning Instagram these days. But I do podcasts like this. I have my own podcast, the Beyond Capital podcast and the BCV podcast, where I help to educate people around emerging markets as well as conscious leadership. And so those are the channels.
And your book, The Good Your Money Can Do, can be found on Amazon. All right, quick speed round. We've talked about a couple books. Is there another book that had an impact on you?
I'm reading Validation at the moment. I can't remember the author's name, but that's the title of the book. Okay. It's a great book about, for me, becoming a better leader.
Okay, good.
Not trying to fix things, just trying to validate people's feelings.
Yeah, good. I like that. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Honestly, I think that wisdom is probably inner wisdom around not being outcomes focused. And that's more intuitive. And that's very hard to do when you're an investor. You're tracking IRRs, you're tracking performance, you're tracking company health. But at the end of the day, it's about a net positive, which luckily we have achieved. And I think being outcomes focused, overly outcomes focused is the same thing as being fear-based.
And one thing you want everybody to get from reading your book, if you could define it in a sentence or a word.
Yeah, I want them to think differently about their money and all their resources.
That's great. This was great. I really enjoyed our talk. Think community. Eva talked about kind of a master's class in raising your self-awareness, being local, being connected with purpose, being connected with just connecting with your community, with yourself, and really listening to yourself and letting that kind of like guide you to something that's purposeful and meaningful to you. I think fulfillment, one of my favorite quotes is "Success without fulfillment equals failure" by Tony Robbins. And I appreciate your insights on kind of your road to fulfillment and the importance of, I just want to add this, silence and meditation. And I think a through line of what you talked about, think community, which I think is really important, taking that silent time to reconnect with yourself and raise your own level of awareness. From there, so many things can become clearer and give you direction on so many fronts. Eva, this was great. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for doing things that are helping the world and making it a better place. And if I could sum everything up also, you taught us a lot about just taking a moment to be more conscious, whether it's in investing, leadership, or just conscious in what we do and our decisions. So thanks so much. That was great. Think community. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Eva.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here with you.